Hello, everybody. Welcome in. My name is Gonzalez Jimenez. I am a former alumni. I'm a current alumni from the University of Sacramento State. I just recently got my bachelor's fall 2020, which is, a big accomplishment, but that's not the point. I'm here to be a presenter. I'm here to share knowledge, wisdom, guidance, stories, testimonies about how it's like how it is to be like an organizer even during a pandemic, and the main focus of my workshop will be on ethnic studies. And let me share my screen really quick. Obviously, my workshop will be resembling on ethnic studies. It's the topic for this presentation obviously will be fighting for ethnic studies during the COVID-19. And like I have just already introduced myself, I will, if you are just walking in or you are just barely able to make it in, obviously, again, my name is Gonzalez Jimenez. I do go by the gender pronouns he, him, his. But I'm giving you like a little recap right now on exactly what we'll be going through today in regards to this presentation. I will do my best not to bore you. I hope you don't fall asleep on me. I know this is a little informative, but it is also reflective, coming from a personal experience, as well as former colegas, organizers, students, faculty members as well, who have and will and are continuing the fight for ethnic studies. Most of the ethnic studies fight that this lecture will be on is focused strictly on the universities, actually, which, yeah, I know for you all, it's like, wow, there's some problems in the universities. Yeah, there's a lot of problems, especially there are big old systems of oppression that just tend to obviously put barriers on people of color. But like I said, this is a little introduction of what we're going to go through. Why are we talking about ethnic studies? What is ethnic studies? The past and the current struggles, obviously, back in the days when the civil rights movement started, it had its problems to create the curriculum, to create the program, which was really challenging for a lot of folks. And but they managed to develop their programs with San Francisco State and UC Berkeley being one of the first ones to have their own program at the for the first time in the early 70s. But obviously in current struggles, like what's going on right now, why isn't it talked about as much? How come it's not being televised? How come you're not hearing about it? But there are struggles that are continuing to grow. But like I said, everything will be coming out from the current struggles from a personal perspective, a testimonial from organizing with a lot of the students from the California State University of Sacramento. We'll be talking a little bit about AB 1460, which is basically an assembly bill that just passed California legislation early fall of 2020. Obviously, and then how does it look like to fight during the time of uncertainty? How is it that students still maintain their activism? How do they maintain perseverance, especially during this pandemic? How are they doing it? What organizations are out there? And obviously, I'm going to follow up with what are some next steps even after folks are just still organizing? Like, what can you do as well as a student, and how you can get involved, whether or not you are in college or not. There's always something we can all do. So I did wanted to show a little poem on why exactly we're talking about ethnic studies. And I wanted to show you all a little clip, a little poem by Teresa Ciaratono. I didn't want to pronounce it incorrectly. Excuse me really quick, I accidentally closed that. And I wanted to share this with y'all, which I personally think it's a really dope poem. It's empowering exactly on what's going on in ethnic studies. And obviously, so give me just a moment. I gotta skip over these little ads. There we go. Hope y'all enjoy.
In college, I used to sit in the back of the class with the other students of color and listen as my white peers theorized the hell out of the oppression that we were born from. Buzzwords like institutionalized racism and class warfare with sugar on their tongues, sweet and comfortable. Words from a language my community didn't even know existed because we were too busy living the realities of them. You see, it's one thing to major in ethnic studies, it is another thing to be the reason for its existence. For the white students in my major, ethnic studies was like a free study abroad program that didn't require that they bring their baggage with them. A privilege that is easy for them to close in their textbook at the end of class. You see, my life is beginning to feel a lot like a free ethnic studies lecture with no tenure. Is this what they meant by public education? But study my racial profile till it exhausts you. Study how black has been made to feel like a green light for stop and frisk. How brown has been made to feel like a much needed check stop at any given border. Ask me what it's like to have my skin be made to feel like a nuclear missile we all know is coming. And you still won't know what it's like to sit in the back of a class and be studied because of how tragic your history is. As if we've only been brought in to be dissected. As if frogs, rats, and people of color can only be understood when you cut them open. See, when ethnic studies, it is not school anymore. It is a lesson in survival. And I'm so tired of playing teacher with my oppression. If I'm not doing it on a stage, I'm doing it from the margins of a classroom. I'm doing it from the margins in my notebook. Always on the margins of something, never the core. Never asked to be anything more than what makes it easy to feel sorry for. You see, it's easy to avoid confronting the things that make us feel uncomfortable. The things that make us feel guilty. Who chooses to walk through the war zone if you are told that you don't have to? If you grew up believing that there isn't one? If what you don't know won't kill you? Race is the rent I pay for this skin. So the belief that racism doesn't exist anymore, especially in my own major, is when I feel the foreclosure of this home taking my knees from right under me. You can't claim that racism doesn't exist if you've never known what it means to survive it. If you keep looking at the war zone like a comfort zone that you're not ready to sacrifice, it's easy to avoid confronting the things that make us feel uncomfortable, the things that make us feel guilty. But comfort is what kills us in the long run. Comfort is sitting down when you should be on your feet. Comfort is staying quiet when you should be speaking up. Comfort is speaking too much when you should be listening. Comfort is building borders for safety and not bridges for healing. Comfort is celebrating diversity but never discussing it. As if a black president is enough. As if a heritage month is enough. As if ethnic studies is enough. As if this poem is fucking enough. Comfort is sitting in the front of the class, forgetting that we're all sitting right behind you, wanting to tell you that the war zone still exists, wanting to tell you that this isn't comfortable for any of us.
So what did y'all think about that? Like, give you like a couple seconds while I settle back in and reflect on exactly what that poem really meant, because obviously she does touch on a lot of stuff, you know, about what ethnic studies really is. You know, like, it's not to make you comfortable. Ethnic studies is meant to make you feel uncomfortable. Speaking about situations that they tend to silence in textbooks that they don't teach you today. Because when I was back in high school, you know, like, they didn't ever taught us anything about ethnic studies. It was all about World War I, World War II, the Holocaust, it's the Civil War, and you know, the Cold Wars. You know, like anything regarding being the United States being victorious. But ethnic studies doesn't do that. You know, it really it speaks on exactly what our history should really be about. And obviously, you know, during the creation of ethnic studies, with it being what is the curriculum, you know, the creation of the curriculum, what is ethnic studies, you know, and like I wanted to reflect on basically what how the Department of Ethnic Studies of UC Berkeley defines ethnic studies, which is the critical and interdisciplinary study of race, ethnicity, indigeneity, with the focus of people of color in the United States. Ethnic studies came about in the 60s and the 70s. People of color were seeking change and took it to the streets during this time, where you had a lot of folks, Black, Brown, Asian, Native American folks, all organizing together to, you know, fight the common oppressor. Where you have the speaking out of people of color, where enough was enough. And ethnic studies came about this movement. This movement gave students and people of color a momentum to change the structure and challenge the inconsistency of democratic tenets of societies and its practices, basically wanting to bring that curriculum, bring it to themselves at the university level where they wanted to learn more and more about who they are as a human being, because we don't learn these things. And that was basically the mission, like understanding where do we come from? Where do our people come from? What land do we live on? Because a lot of folks don't even know what land you sit on. And when I speak about the land, we don't know what indigenous territory this belongs. For example, I'm presenting to you directly from the area of Sacramento, and this is the Niasan and the Tongva people. Correct me if I might be wrong, or or Pat when I really have to really look it up. But originally where I'm from is Sonoma County. I grew up in Windsor. That's the land of the Pomo. Really understanding our heritage, not the heritage, sorry, but understanding and respecting the land of who it really belonged to. There was no curriculum that really focused about explaining where we came from. And that was the purpose of ethnic studies. The purpose of ethnic studies was really to develop, to understand, and really bring about the history that was erased. And it would bring about the understanding of all the ethnic groups and marginalized communities, such as the Latinos, Asian American folks, African American, Native American folks. It even talked about other interdisciplinary subjects, and as well as keeping it intersectional, which means the combination of race, ethnicity, gender, and identity, and making us understand that ethnic studies challenges a lot of these structures that continue to have a silence. If it wasn't for ethnic studies speaking about this, our history would continue to be erased. And then several scholar activists created a transformative mission to bring about the change, where the new discipline will focus its research on the social, historical, and cultural experience of ethnic groups. The discipline focuses on maintaining an understanding of knowledge and perspectives about the experience of ethnic groups. And this actually was brought up in an article by Dr. Scott Otis, who actually wrote an article called Ethnic Studies Preparing for the Future, really kind of understanding of what it was like to be in the late 60s and 70s, not hearing about your identity, not hearing about your culture or your heritage, or where exactly your ancestors came from. And of course, to the image to the right, you see this is actually was taken from the University of Sacramento, if I'm not mistaken, where it basically was having a meeting during the first creation of the first ethnic studies department, where you do have left to right, you have Morgan Otis, a Native American studies instructor, Robert Arellanes, who was a coordinator for the ethnic studies program, who was actually the one that seated. You got Frank Godina, a Mexican American studies instructor. You do have Harvey Reddick, who was actually the dean of the social sciences, which is the arts and sciences at the time. And then you do have Rodney Watson, an African American study instructor, and then as well as Toru Yamanaka, an Asian American instructor. So as you can see, these are the core groups of marginalized groups. One of the four of the core founding groups that made up ethnic studies. But ethnic studies not just only about these four groups; it includes other marginalized groups that are not spoken about yet, as well as a lot of like the LGBTQ community, with the more of introducing of how women's studies came about, to the fight for the inclusion of all those who did not have a voice. And of course, when we speak on ethnic studies, we have to really understand the history of, how it came about, where the structures of ethnic studies came about, how it basically the struggles that came with making this discipline, And so going and reflecting back into Dr. Scott Otis in his article on ethnic studies preparing for the future, he reflects and speaks onto the creation of ethnic studies when programs were developed Many were faced with the challenges such as lacking of funding, unbalanced retention, even requiring evaluations for professors and faculty members. But at the time, this they basically, they gave you the bread, but they didn't give you what you wanted to put in the bread. For example, like if you wanted to make a sandwich, when you have a sandwich, it depends on how you like it. You may like ham, cheese, mayo, whatever, or if you don't eat that, there might be something you enjoy, or how do you make that dish? But what if they just give you one main ingredient? How are you going to be able to create that food without having the adequate rest of the resources? You know, so this basically became a big challenge at the time, and it continued as time progressed. But not even only that, there was a lot of social and political problems, such as affirmative action. You did have Proposition 187 in California. You had racist legislation that just kept getting passed and passed, where folks basically didn't try to do everything in their power to prevent people of color to have a voice in academics, where even in their communities, immigrants as well being targeted. You did have Black folks still being targeted by police, even if to this day you still have them be targeted by police. There's so many social political problems that it was past struggles, but in reality, these past struggles are still current problems. We do not go, these situations don't just get up and leave. They're situations that continue to arise. And even with the color blindness, where people still think that we live in a black and white society. They believe that it's only all about black and white, and whenever something happens, they're like, well, it was just a normal problem. They don't see the whole racial conflict behind it, or the racial prejudice behind it, where a person of color is being attacked by a white person and just being attacked. They don't accept it as a problem, a racist problem. They consider it, oh, it's just they just had a disagreement. No, in reality, like if they see someone talking bad about someone, um, they tend to shut it down and think that it's not a race problem. But in reality, ethnic studies comes around with a lot of the struggles. So as you see, ethnic studies really came about to challenge a lot of these struggles. And like the poem said, ethnic study was meant to make people feel uncomfortable because it brought up the conversation of race, ethnicity, and gender, and all other concepts behind it. Um, and of course, even up to today, today's struggles, we have a lot of structural challenges. And speaking from a current student, as a current student, who just graduated from the University of Sacramento, I'm gonna tell you right now, I met so many beautiful people, and the professors, the faculty were all amazing human beings. There was not a single one that I did not enjoy. I loved every single one of them, but they had their hands tied. They were always busy, always working hard, always trying to provide for the students. And the reason I say that was because there was not enough faculty. um, uh, there was such a very low faculty rate in the ethnic studies department, where the department themselves didn't have enough funding to keep hiring and hiring. They would hire a new professor for each discipline, such as they would hire 1 year for Asian American studies, the next year they'll hire for Black studies, the next year they'll hire for Native American studies, the next year they'll hire for Latinx, Chicanx faculty. And the thing is, like, it makes it so difficult to run an actual structural department. And you see that a lot of these professors are struggling just to keep up with the high demand of students coming in and asking them questions, coming in to asking for resources. But you see such a very small program, where you see other programs such as you see Berkeley, you see San Francisco State, you see San Diego, and other programs that have been fully developed. But there's still other universities that still struggle to make their department grow. And when I talk about department, think of it as like your office, like how, or like a hospital. How about this? We'll do like urgent care. They may have the right, they might have all the resources for certain areas, but they're not like Kaiser where they have all of these resources around them to help them. And that's how the ethnic studies department is here in Sacramento State. It's difficult for them to, be able to share all this information, to help the students at the same time, and to be a professor at the same time because they lack the people power that they need. So they're very minimal that it makes it so much more challenging to provide other classes, to provide enough advising and stuff like that. So one of the biggest challenges for me was not being able to take all the necessary classes I wanted to take. And yeah, maybe it might have been because I chose Sacramento State when I could have chosen another university. But in reality, you don't realize these things when you get there. You find out before you get there, you find out when you get there, you know. And it shouldn't be like that. Every department should be considered to be funded instead of not having enough money to provide for their students. And that's a bigger challenge. That is more of a structural challenge where you don't have a government structure. You don't have the university itself allocating all of their money to help. Well, not all of their money, but at least some type of money to help out this department to grow and fully develop. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, the ethnic studies program has at least 70 to 76% of Latino, Latinx folks, but the amount of Latinx faculty that they have is about 3 to 4 Latinx, Chicanx professors, and it's crazy because not everyone, all of these professors are very spread out, and they only have, I think it's like 2 to 3 full-time faculty members when they should have at least 5 to 6. So the help is very minimal, which makes it a big challenge. And it's like similar to the past challenges where they had very little funding, and even still to this day, up until 2021, they're still struggling. And when this came about, they've been through legislation, bills that have been trying to be passed. But up until barely just recently in 2019, when AB 1460 was included into the floor here at Sacramento, at the state capitol here in California, that's when the ball started rolling, and they were like, okay, it's time to get involved. It's time to do something about ethnic studies. And AB 1460 was introduced by Dr. Shirley Weber, and she helped get the ball rolling on AB 1460, which basically was adding ethnic studies to the graduation requirement. And so why is it so important to add it to the graduation requirement at the CSU system? Well, let me tell you why. The graduation requirement for a CSU system, for you to graduate from Sacramento State, for example, Sacramento State, is to complete 120 units. In those 120 units, they want to include you as a student to at least take one ethnic studies class. It's not adding or subtracting the amount of units. You're still going to be taking 120 units no matter what to graduate. But with AB 1460, all it does is just add it to the conversation of, hey, maybe students should take this, instead of a dance class or a judo class that's supposed to be correlated to ethnic studies. I mean, it's correlated to a race and ethnicity, but in reality, why not learn a little bit about your culture, learn about your past, learn about who you are as a person? And thankfully, a lot of students maintained a lot of the fight, and in the fall, in the spring of 2020, you see students, not this fall, I'm sorry, the spring of 2020, you see students organizing. You see them organizing within Sacramento State. There's an article by the State Hornet, if you are interested in learning a little bit more, which I'm gonna try to explain a little, is that you see students before the time of quarantine happened, students were organizing and activists and lobbying, and were pushing so hard to get ethnic studies AB 1460 passed and approved by Sacramento State faculty. And you see the resistance within the Senate, the state, the university faculty. Because if for those of you who don't know, in Sacramento, well, in all campuses, even I think colleges, they have this thing called a faculty senate. A faculty senate is a body that usually is a governance made up of a representative from each department. So, for example, if you're in high school, you have your sciences, you have your mathematics, you have your maybe your business, maybe your dance, or whatever it is. Think of that, those little those not little those um, departments or little or curriculums that you're being taught. Think about every single professor, every teacher you think. Now pick one person from each area of that focus, and they're basically speaking out for that for that discipline. So you have a representative for science, you have one representative for math, you have one representative so and so, And that being said, that's how it is over there in Sacramento State. You have a faculty senate that is ran by at least a member of each department. And keep in mind, there's a lot of departments in Sacramento State. There's about 40 plus. I don't remember the exact number, but there's at least more than 40 plus faculty members or faculty Senate representatives for that faculty member. And I hope I'm not confusing you with this, because I feel like I'm even getting confused. I'm not gonna lie. But you do have a representative. So basically, it's a representative of every single place, every single discipline in the university, on top of an administrator, representative, and stuff. That being said, you do have a lot of these folks speaking speaking against and for the acceptance of AB 1460, which obviously, like I mentioned, it's the inclusion of ethnic studies in the graduation requirement in all 23 CSU systems. Now, keep in mind that the students were there to protest, to voice with faculty members of the ethnic studies department, to basically state that they want to support AB 1460. And this was coming from the students themselves. This wasn't coming from the faculty. This is coming from the students learning about what this bill was. And this bill, basically, all it was doing is just adding a section called ethnic studies as a graduation requirement. Keeping in mind, we're not adding the 100, we're not adding no more units to the graduation requirement. It's just adding a little section saying that you have an option to take ethnic studies. However, after this whole Senate passed, you did have a lot of conflicts and stuff like that. Then guess what happens? Quarantine happens. Then it becomes difficult to organize. You have the pandemic basically being a breath of air for the folks who were actually against AB 1460, having meetings behind a lot of these students where they're organizing during the pandemic themselves, making decisions for themselves without consulting the bodies of ethnic studies. But even so, the organization that led the student movement of the fight within Sac State for pushing for ethnic studies, they managed to continue to fight, and they kept pushing and pushing and lobbying as much as possible. Even if they had to jump into Zoom meetings and stuff like that, they went into those Zoom meetings ready to speak for ethnic studies. This picture actually, it was taken before the pandemic for sure, or like before the pandemic even began, where you have a lot of folks fighting for ethnic studies, and this is where it goes back into, the perseverance during the times of uncertainty. The organization continues to work. A lot of students, for example, that you see here are still continuously meeting. They're transitioning a lot of their club meetings online, or they're strategizing online in order to see how is it that they can prepare, how is it that they can share knowledge, how is it that they continue to fight for ethnic studies. And you see a lot of these students still considering how important ethnic studies really means to them. And I tell you this from a personal experience, because ethnic studies to me was dear and heart. It gave me something to to believe in, not to believe in, but to understand, to be a part of, to feel accepted, to a place of comfort, somewhere where I know for a fact that, hey, these are my people. They speak for us, they help us understand what it's like, what it is like to be a person of color. We all have different stories, and ethnic studies is the reason for these stories to happen. And a lot of these students saw took advantage of these moments because they realized they're like, hey, we're going through a pandemic. Let's just continue to work because what they say, uh, the revolution doesn't sleep, and neither does the oppressors. The oppressors will find every little moment to continue to undermine communities of color, and they're always thinking the next step. How is it that we're gonna make it more difficult? But if we sleep on it, then that's when we start to lose, and that's where students started to realize the problem, the problems that harm students as organizers was the quarantine. But you know what they did? They got back online. They were like, you know what? We can't just sit back because the pressures ain't gonna sleep. They're gonna continue to work and we'll continue to work. So we should continue to work. But there's obviously, such momentums of like, when you're stuck at home and you have nothing to do, or more like you do have something to do, but at the same time you feel this necessity of wanting to be outside, wanting to go hang out with your friends. But when this this virus came about, it really changed their lives. And a lot of students now, didn't get to graduate. They didn't get to walk. They didn't have a lot of those families reunions that they once had, or a lot of folks didn't have a lot of that. But the way a lot of students maintained a perseverance was basically by organizing, reading, understanding um, uh, what's going on. And what's crazy? Even during this pandemic, AB 1460 still passed into a lot of the students that kept pushing and pushing and fighting. It ended up in the governor's desk, and in late August, I believe, or late September or early September, AB 1460 passed, which was a huge win for a lot of folks, because this kind of gave us a more of a better understanding of like, damn, our work mattered. Our work mattered, helping us regain that conscious of like, oh my God, like I thought the oppressor won, but no, their hard work maintain this humanity within themselves, that this helped them continue to organize. And they're like, it don't stop here. We got to continue. We got to continue to fight. We can't just stop here. And now you see a lot of these organizations holding annual summits. You have some of them just having normal meetings in order to have another conversation on what's the next step between AB 1460. You have another conferences as well. Keeping up, persevering, the perseverance during a time of uncertainty comes back again, and it's like, we're not uncertain. We know what we want. We're gonna get through it, and that's the most beautiful thing, is that students don't give up. We're resilient. We're strong. We have a lot of distractions, but we can do it. And that is the crazy part, because sometimes they expect us to just stay quiet and thinking that something's gonna stop us. Ain't nothing gonna stop us if we keep working. We got to keep pushing. If we don't keep pushing, like, we'll let them win. But our future matters, and it's just like Dr. Otis. We got to prepare for the future no matter what. You see, 50 years ago, they had us oppressed. We fought, and we're still fighting up until this day. The fight never ends. It will end once we all unite. and we continue to be the suppressor. And we got to fight to protect our stories. And like I said, why ethnic studies? Ethnic studies is the reason why. Ethnic studies is the reason why we need to be here. Why we're here. Ethnic studies gives us that platform to tell our stories, to tell who we are. Even though the past and the present have a lot of correlation, things don't change. But you know who needs to change? We need to change. And with us to need it to change, we will have we will continue to have a lot of resilience. And I love to share this poem because this poem always grounds me. It puts me back on my feet, and it makes me really understand how I'm surviving and how can I maintain my activism within a time of uncertainty. But this poem really grounds me and really puts me back to the mood, back to the groove of continue to work, to provide for my community, to. For my gente. And like I will read it to you all. Read it in your head or read it out loud with me. But if you heard of this poem, it was inspired by Luis Valdez. It was he calls it the serpent thought, el pensamiento de la serpiente, el pensamiento serpentino, the serpent thought, basically. But like it goes, read it after me if you want, or if not, just read it on your own or just in your head, however you want. But I will read it out loud. Just letting y'all know. Tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo. I do harm to myself. Si te amo y te respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo. I love and respect myself. I love and respect myself. We must continue to organize, get involved. We must continue to stand our ground. We must continue to speak out, make those folks who are racist uncomfortable. Don't stay quiet, but be respectful. But show them that you are knowledgeable and you understand what they wish they understood. They are not in your shoes. They will never be in your shoes. But at the end of the day, it is our stories that matter, our family stories, our caregiver stories, our guardian stories. Like we're here, and it's thanks to our ancestors. It's thanks to the Creator. But at the end of the day, we must fight to protect our stories, and that's why it's important to continue to fight. And that's how we stay. That's how we preserve ourselves to continue to organize, especially when we're fighting for ethnic studies, because they expect us to stay silent. But you know what? We don't stay quiet. No, hell no, we don't. They say that we should just turn around and walk the other way. But in reality, we must walk forward, even through all the bumpy roads, no matter what. And if we fight and we walk, we stand tall amongst each other, support one another, love one another, we're definitely going to get through whatever comes on our way. No pandemic, no oppressor's going to stop us, because together we will combat whatever comes in our way. So how to be part of the resistance, I like to call it the resistance, or part of the revolution, or whatever y'all want to call it, or just part of the movement. There's so many ways you can get involved. And that's the reason why I keep bringing ethnic studies. I'm going to tell y'all right now, you don't have to be a part of an ethnic studies major like I did. I did it because I wanted to learn more and more about other cultures, and also understand where they came from, how they struggled, what is the biggest challenges that a lot of these communities face, or what are the continuing struggles that they face. But the way is for you to be a part. Look at ethnicstudiesnow.com. You can see a lot of the petitions, what's going on through legislation, what is it that their next steps are to push, how is it that they're trying to incorporate ethnic studies into your high school or universities, because the more and more ethnic studies expands, the more and more we become better human beings, the more and more we understand who we are, the more and more we learn about our neighbor, the more and more that we learn to love one another. So get involved in your campus, even if it isn't, even if it isn't activist, an activist perspective or whatever it is, but be involved, create a community, or create your own chapters of Mecha. You know, I'm sure if you were to ask anybody, what is Mecha? I guarantee you, some at least 1 out of 5 of those people are going to tell you what Mecha is, and a lot of folks will know. But if you don't want to be a part of Mecha, create your own organization that will follow your own guidance. You know, but be a part of something important. Be about the change. Don't think that you're not able to be a change. You are the change. You are the future. Don't forget. Advocate and tell your teachers about ethnic studies. Tell them, híjole, I just learned from this guy out of via Zoom what ethnic studies is about. I want to learn more and more. I only gave you like a brief summary. There's so much more about ethnic studies. I only gave you a historical background on what ethnic studies is. I didn't give you the full lecture. I gave you what I wanted to give you because I don't want to bore you, because I don't think you want to hear a whole lecture. No, I'm just kidding. But in reality, there's so much information I could just spend talking and talking and talking about. Ethnic studies just has so many more conversations to be discovered that you would want to learn. And I'm sure your parents have a story, your cousins have a story, your teachers have a story. It's all about humanizing the experience again, and that's the point of how to be part of the resistance, going back into humanizing who we are. So think about getting involved. Think about taking a Chicana Latinx studies in college. It don't matter what they say. Take it, understand it. Don't let them discourage you of wanting to learn about ethnic studies, or Chicana ethnic studies, or Asian American studies, or African American studies, or Native American studies, or women's studies, or queer and trans studies. Take the courses, understand their stories, and let's start becoming the next change. And I don't want to conclude, I just want to say, let's create a resistance within ourselves. Let's continue to spread the love, always for sure continue to understand one another, listen to one another. Don't be quick to judge, really comprehend, because everybody has a story. And we all must understand that all these stories will come back, and you will see that we all matter. But we must continue to be there for our communities too. We have look at all the folks who continue look at all the folks who continue to be murdered at the hands of police. Look at what's been going on during this pandemic, targeting Asian communities, where you see elder folks being targeted in the middle of the streets. That shouldn't even be happening. We got to also really understand. We also got to control our the way we talk to one another, because how is it that we know we're not damaging somebody? We got to be there for our communities. No more detention. We not more detention. We got to stop with the attacking one another. We got to love one another for sure. And at the end of the day, we must be there for our communities and stand up for our communities, because without one another, there's no other. All right. I do thank you all for coming to my workshop. I hope I didn't bore you. I really hope you can take what I brought to you, and really take and reflect I didn't give you the whole big old context, and I do apologize if I did stutter a lot. Obviously, hey, I ain't perfect. I'm gonna tell y'all right now, even if I got my BA, it don't matter. I still, I'm still just like you, still learning. But for sure, don't be afraid to learn more about your culture. Don't let them tell you your culture doesn't matter. Your culture matters. Learn about it. Be about it. You know. But again, thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know I probably bored you a little bit. I hope you didn't fall asleep. Uh, but if you do have any questions, I will see what way I can leave my information or something. I will talk to the coordinators. But other than that, yeah, yo, like um, feel free to reach out. My name's again, Alexander Gonzalez Jimenez, gender pronouns he, him, his. Um, Feel free to reach out to me. If you can't, Rafael, Dr. Vasquez, Rafa has my information. I mean, if you want to reach out personally, ask them, be like, hey, I took Alex's workshop and, it was pretty cool or not, or even if you just want to have a conversation, it don't matter, just reach out. All right, y'all. Other than that, y'all have a wonderful day. Hopefully, y'all continue to come to these conferences or be a part of these conferences. All right. If not, enjoy the rest of your day. Um, and I hope that y'all continue to have fun and enjoy whatever there is to offer. And don't be afraid to learn new things. But yeah, gracias. Thank you for your time and your day. Have a good day.